Without objection.
Madam President, earlier this week, in the eyes of the nation, we watched the inauguration ceremony here in Washington. A week before that, back in Indiana, I was present at the celebration for the inauguration of Indiana's 50th governor, former Congressman Mike Pence, who's taking over after 8 years of leadership under our former governor, Mitch Daniels. And so back-to-back weekends had two special events. And at a time of inauguration, it's a time for a reflection on what has happened in the past and vision and description about how we ought to go forward with the future. It's time for opportunity in one sense to begin anew. And it's an opportunity for change, to make the kind of change necessary to address the problems and challenges that we face. As I participated and watched the inauguration events for Governor Pence in Indianapolis just 2 weekends ago, I couldn't help but think of the remarkable record of achievement and the bold reforms that our former Governor Mitch Daniels delivered to the Hoosier State and the lessons that they offer or may offer to us here in Washington. You see, in 2005, Indiana faced a several $100 million deficit. Pales by comparison to the deficit we face here, but nevertheless, for a state our size, a not insignificant amount. We had not balanced our budget, even though it's constitutionally mandated. We had not balanced it for 7 years. Governor Daniels and his team had the vision and the political courage to make much-needed changes, and the people of Indiana supported and responded. And while other states increased spending and raised taxes, Indiana reduced spending, cut taxes, and paid down our debts. Governor Daniels and the legislature, and with the support of the people of Indiana, slowed down the rate of spending. The state's expenditures have grown at less than 1/4 of the rate of the previous decade. They also reduced the size of state government. Indiana has the fewest state employees per capita in the country. We paid down the previous debt by 43%, and we currently sit with a budget surplus and a rebate program which will give money collected in taxes back to the taxpayer because of the efficiency and the effectiveness of our spending program in terms of running our government. Indiana, as a result of this, has received its first AAA credit rating, meaning that when we do need to borrow or sell bonds to do certain infrastructure or meet other needs, we will receive the lowest interest rates possible because of our superb AAA rating. So all this has transformed Indiana's balance sheet and made our state one of the most attractive places to live, raise a family, and do business in the Midwest, if not in the nation. The story of Indiana and how it got hold of its fiscal issues has been written up in national journals and newspapers and trumpeted on talk shows and documentaries and others. It's a remarkable story. Not unique, because we see these things happening in other states around the country, led not only by Republican governors, by Democrat governors. These are the kind of decisions that have to be made, that had to be made, and are being made in order to bring government's fiscal house in order. And it has created a much brighter future for the citizens of those states. Governor Daniels has often said, you'd be amazed by how much government you'll never miss. And the results of his administration back that up. You can go around Indiana, as I have, talking to people from big cities to small, rural to urban, and everything in between, and asking people, based on what we've done over the past few years, how we've moved from deficit to surplus, the functions of government what's your take on all that? And what do you believe has been cut that you think should have stayed? And frankly, no one can come up with an answer that says, we've had disastrous consequences from these decisions. Everyone says, no, everything's working pretty well. In fact, I can get my license renewed through a total revamp of our licensing system in just a few minutes over the internet, or just a few minutes at the DMV. Governor Daniels' measure for that was in and out in less than 7 minutes. For those of us who have spent some of our lives spending hours and hours and hours committing half a day or more to go get your license renewed, this is a remarkable achievement. The use of technology, the use of privatization, the use of a more efficient government demands that our civil servants do more with less, have proven to be effective. Now, while the fiscal situation that we faced in Indiana is not totally analogous to what we face here, the principles are the same, and there are many similarities. As Washington seeks answers as we look now in the start of this new session of Congress as to how we go forward dealing with our extremely serious debt situation and getting our fiscal house back in order so that we too can retain a AAA rating, so that we too can provide the opportunity for growth and opportunity for not just the middle class, but for all Americans in the future. Maybe there's some lessons to be learned from all this. The spend less, borrow less, and tax less Hoosier model has resulted in balanced budgets, job creation, AAA credit rating, and in contrast, the spend more, borrow more, and tax more approach in Washington during these last several years has resulted in fewer jobs, higher debt, and a threatened downgrade from credit agencies. So as we reflect back on the last 4 years of this current administration, it's clear to me that we must take a different course in the second term of this administration. Now, whether lawmakers want to admit it or not, the crux of our problem is this: Washington has promised Americans far too much and committed well beyond our means. Federal spending and borrowing cannot continue at this current pace without dire consequences. Whether you're reading or listening to a liberal economist or a conservative economist or a nonpartisan economist or an analyst, Wall Street or anyone else, there is a consensus that sustaining our current rate of borrowing and spending simply is not feasible, and the consequences will be dire if we don't address it. So as we seek to address these issues, my suggestion for Washington is to take a look at the Hoosier model. It's tested, it's proven, and it's working. We need to go big and bold. We need to have the political courage to look beyond the short-term political consequences as we perceive them, and the long-term benefit from sound policies, which, interestingly enough, translate into good politics, strengthening our economy and getting our country on a track to brighter and more prosperous times. We have proven in Indiana that good policy, no matter how politically difficult it might seem at the time to achieve, does translate into good politics. But much more important than the politics, good policy can translate into strengthening our economy, improving the lives of Americans, and providing opportunity for future generations. It's time we learn that lesson here in Washington, that our state of Indiana and many states across the country, as well as other communities, are learning. It's time that we exhibited the political courage to stand up and do what I think just about everyone in this body understands, and that is get a hold of runaway spending and borrowing that is putting us in a very, very deep fiscal hole and will have significant dire consequences not only on future generations but even our current generation. The time is now. As I said from this spot yesterday, 2013 is the decisive year. In 2014, we will be back into an election year, and that tired old saw of we can't make these kind of changes with an election looming. Only after the next election can we do so. Will push us into 2015, And many who have looked at our situation fiscally and analyzed it from a nonpartisan, non-ideological basis have said 2015 is too late. And so this is the time when we need to summon our courage, summon our political will, and do what is right for the American people and for the benefit of all the American people. We cannot continue to bump along at less than 2% growth. We cannot continue to keep more than 8% or nearly 8% of our people unemployed. And obviously, that number is much higher when you count those who are no longer looking for work or have given up. We cannot continue to keep America on the edge of uncertainty in terms of what our fiscal future will look like. And so let us summon that courage to go forward, and let us use examples from those states, those jurisdictions, the support of those governors, and the support that they've received from people across those states. Let us summon up the courage to do what we need to do. I want to continue to keep talking about how we need to address this go big, go bold, because everyone says and concludes that if we can put that package together to address our long-term ills over a period of time and bring us back into balance, we will see a revival of the economy of this country, and we will see great hope for the American people going forward. Madam President, with that, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.